Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Monday. Commissioner Weber is out for the next 2 weeks, I understand. So you got us. We'll just start. And I don't know if Superior Court's going to show up. Doesn't matter. Is that where you're going to?
It's the clerk, Superior Court clerk.
Yeah. So we're going to go over the budget anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do that then.
And Stacy may be online.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So on their revenue, Kathy Fenton Baxter, Finance Director. So on their revenue, on intergovernmental, it is a bit lower than what we would target it to be at this point in time. But there's a couple of items that haven't been received yet. And so that accounts for part of the reason why it's a bit behind. Although it is, it's not a significant number right now. And then other financing sources is a bit behind, lagging as well. We're looking at, there were some positions that were slated to be funded by ARPA. And so we're going to be looking at that to see if that requires any kind of budget amendment. And so anyway, otherwise, there isn't anything to be concerned about. Goods and services are well above where we targeted them for this point in time. And that's it on the revenue side.
Explain to me, you said we had some positions that will be funded by ARPA?
They were put in the budget to be funded by ARPA. And so then they would be reimbursed because they're general fund positions and they would be reimbursed by ARPA funds. So I'm looking at that. Stacy said she doesn't recall those positions being funded by ARPA. So
I was just going to ask what happens when ARPA isn't there.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
So that would be something we would probably want to address in this next budget to discuss those positions that were funded either temporarily or with one-time money and make sure that we have them covered.
When you say it was scheduled to or ordered to be funded from ARPA, it was known then it's a temporary position or a full-time position or a long-term position?
Yeah, I don't know when the positions were approved originally because it was before my time, but for our budget worksheets, it had it earmarked as ARPA reimbursement. So we're going to double check that.
We had some issues there. I don't know that I recall it accurately. There was funding from the Blake decision, and we never really used very much of that, which kind of surprised me. And I don't know, that did include personnel for the PA's office, I think. I don't know whether it included personnel for.
It did. And we're doing those, we're continuing to do those quarterly, and they keep track of their time as far as what time is allocated towards Blake decisions. So yeah, so we are getting reimbursed for those. It's not a large amount of funding coming in on those. So this represents, I believe we did our billing for the second quarter just recently. So, or the first quarter, we still need to do our billing for the second quarter.
Commissioners, this is Stacy Michael Best.
There's Stacy.
I can address the Blake positions. We did not receive any positions regarding the Blake funding that was available. We are getting the reimbursement for our time, but we didn't add positions for Blake. I think the PA's office and I believe OPD was funded through the state, and I'm not positive about Superior Court, but our office did not get funding directly for the Blake decisions.
That is
ARPA positions
how I remember it.
Huh?
That is how I remember it also.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the ARPA positions that we had temporary, we had 4 temporary that were through last year. And then we have 2 positions that were through the end of this year that were temporary on the ARPA funding.
I'd like to remind, well, remind isn't the right word. I'd like to tell the chairman that, in fact, during all the COVID issue, when you were processing fewer the cases, you actually gainfully employed your staff with a very difficult and obnoxious task of taking paper product and making a digital product properly classified. So I really appreciated that you did that.
Yes, thank you. We made a huge dent in our backlog of cases that had never been scanned into the system. So we were scanning and proofing all of those so we could digitize those and get rid of the case files that were taking up storage space.
Yeah, I know we talked about hiring temp in there instead, but it just didn't make any sense as you argued, because you're not just scanning, you're actually categorizing, and that requires more familiarity than a temp would have.
Right.
So on this report, is it through June inclusive?
Yes, it's through the month of June. We ran, the data is through July 9th, but it basically has all of the June 30th ending data.
Is it standard for me then to interpret, like here, July 9th, this is as of July 9th live,
Yep.
and all the other reports is that way?
Yes, they all have the data.
Sure, because I think I recall seeing somewhere it's, well, certainly when you've got tax data and all that, but I thought in general there was a variation. So you will go right down to the day then.
And we're trying to remember, we're trying to do these, anyone who's already presented, we're only doing them on a quarterly basis. I think this is the first time we presented clerk, but it is through, basically it has 6 months worth of data in it. It's through this July date.
Okay, thank you. And then just to be sure I understood, the intergovernmental stuff you feel is something that is backlogged.
Yes, and Stacy confirmed that there's at least 2 areas that they haven't received those funds yet.
Okay, is that because we haven't submitted?
No,
or
it's
they're
just
lacking?
They're just lagging.
Lagging, yeah.
Lagging. Yeah. On the expenditure data, they're really on their personnel, their target, they're below their target for this year. And I attribute that primarily because they do have some vacant positions. We're showing that they have open like 4.5 positions as of right now. So other than that, there isn't anything that I'm concerned about, and that that they won't exceed their budgets.
Question, are you still on,
Yes.
Stacy? Yes, I see you. The being 4.5 FTEs short, what are the implications?
We technically aren't 4.5 positions short. We do have some people that are in temporary spots that just need to be moved into our permanent. Again, using some of those ARPA funds for those positions. We are in the process of hiring, and I do have right now we have 3 staff that have been here for less than 6 months. So it's kind of hard to hire that many all at once with the training that's required for our position. So we just kind of try to stagger things out a little bit.
So how many people does that 4.5 represent?
How many does it represent? I
Yeah.
think we're actually down 2 point, and I don't know where the 0.5 comes in because we don't have part-time positions. So I think we're only down 2 right now.
Okay, so I'm a little kind of nervous about the numbers then, because if I saw that and knew nothing else, I would think that you're not able to do your job and you're
Nope.
able to. And the reflection on overtime is like when you bring your two people on board finally, overtime will go down, or do you have overtime of any extent?
We don't have overtime to speak of. Our overtime right now is at less than $200 this year. We don't have overtime. If staff does have time that's like worked over, they usually do it in comp time. It's very rare. Occasionally court goes over, but we don't have overtime.
So is it correct for me to assume that essentially that FTE open on the current year should be pretty much a zero?
FTE open? No, we do have two.
And that's because you always have two, or because you specifically need two?
We need two more. It's just, like I said, a matter of training. We're in the process of interviewing and hiring right now, but we've had to hold off because we can't train more than 3 people at a time.
Okay, so this is to make sure your pipeline for attrition is adequate. Because
Yes.
right at the moment, you said you actually don't have any even overtime, so everything that you need to do is being done.
Right. We are
So-
not, we have stopped tackling that backlog, so we still have that on our plates. And that is one of the positions that we are looking at filling, is somebody to continue doing that archive scanning. And then we do have one of our almost 30-year staff members that are going to be leaving at any time, so.
Okay, I think I got it.
And I believe my number includes your ARPA temporary positions.
Yes,
Oh, that's
So
what
that- Yeah,
you're looking at it from the budget standpoint.
right from the
Amazing.
budget standpoint. Mhm.
Yeah, so how will that be resolved?
what do you mean?
Yeah,
When the ARPA money goes, where does the continuation funds come from?
I think she mentioned that they were she's anticipating they are going to be temporary positions just for this year.
Yeah, our ARPA funding ends December of 24. And that's like why we're leaving positions open, is because I do have people that I want to put in those positions. But the ARPA funding is going away, so that's going to be a transfer of those funds.
Now, that ARPA funding came through the clerk's office and not through the board?
What do you mean? It came through,
Well, because you're an independent elected, you could have gotten a grant directly without really going through the board.
no, I went through the board.
Okay, so we looked at our ARPA money and said,
Mhm.
we'll fund you until this amount.
Yeah,
Okay.
these are through the county,
Sorry, I
county's
just couldn't
ARPA funds.
remember.
Yes. That's all I have on the clerk's financials.
Okay, thanks, Stacy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good seeing you, Stacy. It's been a while.
You as well. Come visit.
Treasurer?
Treasures. The next one that we have up is the treasures. Now, Deborah's probably going to come up just in case you have any questions. On the revenue side, our taxes, I'm looking at my financials and I don't see. They're not on, I have an explanation, but the taxes didn't show up on a revised sheet. So anyway, this one is missing our taxes bar graph and our taxes line at the top. And so I'll get a corrected copy to you. But the taxes are above the 6-month mark, and as far as target, and that's primarily because we receive the property tax collections in 2 cycles, the largest one being the April, and then followed with a cycle in October. And then, of course, there's taxes every month being collected. When we did our finance presentation, I had a recap of where we were at as far as the property tax collections. That's something that Deborah's office provides or monthly. And so we're on track for our property taxes. So I'm not concerned about that. And then these other areas are miscellaneous revenue. It's at 1.8. We're slightly up for where it was this time last year. It was at 1.7 last year. But right now, we pretty much on several of the areas have exceeded our, we're actually expected to exceed our revenue budget. And so I'm anticipating we'll probably amend that in the October budget amendment, which is a good thing. We'll be amending it up. And I don't think and this includes primarily investment income on miscellaneous revenue.
Investment income is generally apportioned out, but that you're just saying the aggregate is this.
The aggregate.
Because on a per capita base, a business says, how much do I make per employee or something like that? This has to be a star because her office is not overstaffed.
Yeah.
Where's the money? Over at the treasurer's office.
Yeah.
Question, at some point I'd like, but after you get through with this, I was going to ask about tax property and that kind of thing, but I can ask after you're done with the expenses.
Okay. Going to the expenses, on the personnel, the largest budget, personnel expenses are actually below target at this point. And so, but they're a little bit above prior year. And so I don't see any issue on that. There are no vacancies at this time. So.
Tell me again, the red diamond on
The red diamond
personnel?
is prior year. It's where we were at prior
Back to
year.
the prior year. Okay.
And then the circle is what we would expect if we were doing a 12-month pro rata. So
You've only told me 6 times.
that's
Maybe
okay.
by the 10th it'll get it.
It's okay. So I'm sorry, I'll give you a new treasurer's report. I don't know what happened. We updated these, and so it didn't pull in the tax line, property tax line, which is pretty important because it's a significant number.
Yeah.
Well, and for Deborah Gardner, Cowlitz County Treasurer, through June 30th, so far, we've collected 55.96% of our total tax collections. So,
Is that about, you're talking just property tax?
correct.
Yeah. That sounds like it's a little bit below what it usually is. Am I correct?
Well, one of the things I have prior year's information here, but I didn't do through June 30th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have done everything, through June 30th, but
When I ran it for the finance presentation, last year is almost identical. It's like 56%, and that was what,
55.9.
Is
Yeah.
that in terms of dollars or?
dollars.
You see, I'm looking at the per tax bill, did everybody who owed taxes, how many of them paid?
Oh,
Because that's a number to just help us see how, if people are really struggling or not.
You have, it's not that exact thing, but a little bit of it, because on that far column, going back to what you showed us, there's like, then there's 23 and 22 and there hasn't been any gains really in what I would call delinquents.
Oh,
You know?
you're talking about the taxes receivable by authority report,
Right.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, just from the numbers, I went back to 2020 for the full year. And right as of June 30th, because there are some of those delinquents that we're still collecting. For 2020, we have 99.97% collection at this, through June 30th. 21 was 99.95, 22 is 99.6,
Yeah.
23 is 99.12. So our collection rate, we keep collecting on those prior years.
Yeah.
And the other thing is once a property is 3 years past due, then it goes into foreclosure and we collect the property tax through the foreclosure sale if it does sell and not go to tax title, so.
right.
I've been told that you have on staff a rather robust number of individuals that go out and explain to you why you should pay your taxes. I'm only kidding. It's a strong arm approach. So taxes that are delinquent, one property that comes to mind that we had a heck of a time, what's those tax lots around Mount Solo? Have they been sold off or what's happened there?
I'm not sure are you talking Mount Solo? Is it a subdivision?
No, I think Jeff Wilson, I know, was paying some taxes on property.
Oh,
that-
the landfill.
Eh.
The Mount Solo landfill has been closed down. Yeah,
It's still open.
that went into tax foreclosure and nobody bid on it. So that is now tax title. So it's just sitting there and the county holds it in trust. And then if we were to sell tax title parcels and someone came along and wanted to buy it.
Is there a floor to the price you would take on that?
It would be.
By law?
What's that?
By law, is there, I mean, you've got back taxes. Normally, you have to pay the back taxes, and in this case, you don't have to pay the back taxes if you buy it.
If we were to put it, if we were to do a tax title auction, we would start the minimum bid at all of the taxes and fees that are owed to the county at that time.
But you would take a lower price?
That's what we would start the minimum bid at.
Oh, the
So,
minimum
no.
bid, so you'll still end up holding it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on treasurer's financials?
That's the revised one? That shows the tax
Oh,
collections?
they
That
said,
was
they
drawn
emailed
from
it
the
to
other-
you. I don't have my
Yeah.
laptop with me.
So yeah, you're on track easily.
Yeah, we're on
Yeah.
track. I'm not concerned about the property tax. What we budgeted is very conservative to what we received, so. Put my glass, I think I need to put my glasses on.
Well, I couldn't read that.
Yeah.
You're
So
having
we're
trouble too?
about, yeah, we're above target as far as where we're compared to the budget. And we're-
budget's about 21 and we're
And
at
we're right about
around
where we
12.
were
Yeah,
received.
yeah. Okay,
Okay. Anything else?
Oh, what's the current interest rate that you're making in the pool?
As of June 30th, it was 5.06.
And could you tell me when I watch, how would I at a glance, looking at financial news today, discern whether the 5.06 is going to go up or down? Just a guess, yeah.
Well, if you're watching the news and you're following the Fed funds rate, that's what the state investment pool is going to follow. So that has remained constant this year, about 5.4%.
The Fed's fund rate is different than the 10-year bond.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the rate that is, it's, how do you explain that? It's the short-term interest rate. So the 2-year rate, right, just dropped this last week. Here, I wrote it down here.
Yeah, it's dropped quite a bit.
The 2-year rate has been at 6/30, it was at 4.75. So if you invested in a security out to 2 years, that was the average rate at 4.75. That just dropped this last week to 4.5. On 3/31, it was 4.6. As of 6/30, the 10-year note was 4.4.
So how much are we making in the fund? You said 506?
Yeah, 5.06. And our effective duration of our pool is 1.38. So we have, excuse me, instead of just leaving everything in the state investment pool at the 5.41, we are laddering out some 1-year, 2-year, 3-year investments to help hold that duration or hold that interest rate higher for a longer period of time. Because as soon as the Fed start dropping the rates, the state investment pool will start dropping, but we will still have some of those securities tied out to 2 to 3 years at the higher interest rate.
Once we have like a 2-year out bond, and say interest rates drop strongly, do we sell that bond for the capital gains?
No,
We just hold it until maturity.
correct.
You don't have a crystal ball either.
No,
Okay.
everyone talks about that crystal ball that we all wish we had, but we don't. But we are, we are following the benchmarks of our policy, and we're just staying with the course. And
I'm just surprised you're at 5.06. So my original question would say, based on what you just said, I might anticipate it's going to go down. And if it were to go down, would it go down on a month boundary, or what's the lag time? Is that adjusted every day?
as we would look at it on a monthly basis, and as securities mature, we have to turn around and reinvest them. So if we're reinvesting at a lower rate, and you put all of that whole portfolio together and average it out, yes, if the rates start dropping, our pool, eventually as the securities mature, will start dropping as well.
Got it. What's the shortest maturity?
We keep our liquid cash in the state investment pool,
And
which is
liquid cash
earning-
means overnight?
yes, which is earning 5.4%.
So we'll see that get hit much faster than anything else.
Correct. But when we look at our pool, we take, all of that, the state pool and all of our securities combined at the 5.08. And the state pool is, we come in the morning and we look at how many warrants and, any payments going in and out, and that's for the county and all of our districts. And we look at how much cash we need in our checking account to cover everything. And so on a daily basis, we're either withdrawing or depositing to the state pool to keep our cash invested as fully as possible.
How much of your staff effort goes into this on a daily basis? Almost none?
Yeah, I have one position that manages these banking balances and is looking at all of these transactions on a daily basis. We're balancing the checkbooks, looking at the cash. We're doing all the work for the districts, covering their payrolls and all of their warrant payments and.
But it's the consultants who do much of the arranging of what the pool looks like?
Yes, as the securities mature, they will give us some proposals on what's out there. And we talk about, how long, we follow that benchmark of our portfolio. So whatever fits into our benchmark is what we're looking at to reinvest.
So they don't do any reinvestment automatically. They go through you. I mean, they give you a proposal and you check it for sanity and
Correct.
I know you're not too familiar with these things.
Yeah, I think we have a meeting on Thursday, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I think when you set up with them, and I think it was right before I came on board, they probably sit down and said, what kind of parameters make sense for this county? And that's kind of what they operate within.
Yes, and we come up with those benchmarks and we just stick to, well, if we need to, we do a yearly review if we are gonna, adjust, if we need to adjust any of our benchmarks, but.
Yeah, we're really pretty cautious. I don't see a lot of anything risky out there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree, but I'm still impressed at 506.
Yeah,
With being
it's been a good
cautious.
yield, yeah.
Well, and other counties we started our pool at the ultimate time because other counties that already had a pool prior to ours, their pools are, 2-3% because they had those longer term securities out there that were tied up when the rates move so quickly.
And that's a choice that the committee makes, but how long the average should be for you.
Yes. But the other thing is those other counties were earning higher interest rates before this all happened because they had, they weren't just investing in the state pool when it was 0.09%. They had, those 1, 2, 3 year
Yeah.
investments that were earning them higher interest rates.
I don't know what the other counties do for duration, but I think we're about 1 1/3 years.
Yes.
We keep it actually fairly short.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So do you try and play like crystal ball game? Like, is it gonna be
I think that's
1.3?
what we pay those people to do, is do a
So
little
they're
bit of the crystal
that's
ball.
what I'm looking
Yeah.
for, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they help us, if we need, like I said, we follow our benchmarks and we're like, this is where we're gonna go at this point. And if the rates change and we have a discussion at our finance committee meeting and maybe we, want to adjust our benchmarks, but, at the time we're following our plan and sticking to it. And if we need to change it, but
And you meet every month,
quarterly.
every quarter?
I think.
Mhm.
And it's this Thursday.
It's this Thursday, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In the time I've been on, I come from a industry where we had those type of advisors, but then we also had a company that audited to make, just to double check everything we did. And I think these people were using, and I don't remember, for me to hold on to the names, I don't remember them, but I know from what I'm looking at, I think they do a pretty good job for us.
Yeah, it's called Government Portfolio Advisors. All right, any other questions?
I could go on for a long time, but no, I thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Elections. It's that time of year. It's getting real close to that time.
According to Carolyn, it's always that time. She's alert about everything, especially new law changes.
So elections on the revenue side, there isn't anything significant to report. The only area that's lagging to the budget is our other financing sources, and that's a transfer in from the general fund. And we haven't made that yet. Carolyn will alert me when it's necessary to make that transfer. So that way the money stays in the general fund. So on the revenue side, there isn't anything significant to.
Is the beginning fund on reserve, that's held at the treasurer's office.
As far as it's held as probably as an investment.
Right. And who gets the interest off of that? Is it the elections off? Not that it really matters a whole
Yeah,
bunch.
it's the elections office.
Okay, so when I look at a report, I know that's in there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Question. It's a good question because the elections is an internal service fund. It is not general fund. So when you're asking who gets the interest, it is elections. It doesn't go back to general fund.
And then as far as expenses, we'll jump to expenses for elections. They are right on track for their expenses. The personnel is a bit below target and slightly above prior year. Supplies are at target, slightly above their target, but it's also anyway, they're right at target. I'm sorry. It's services that's above target, but that goes back to the explanation that most of our internal services are billed once a year, and that happens in January. So as time goes on, that will start to change because the target will go up. So there isn't anything on their expenses that I'm concerned about at this point in time.
And Kathy's right, our services are billed out, but we can't calculate those costs or allocate them correctly until we have the entire year completed. So you'll see those in January.
So the target, if everything were synchronized, would be half a year plus 9 days. So it'd be
Well,
50%.
Yeah, we just basically use what's the closest time period, the 6 months. Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
So they're actually at 45% and our target would be 50%. And then we also, I assume there's no other questions on that. They also have an election capital reserve fund. There really isn't any, there's very little actual revenue coming into that fund. And so I believe that's something that if there's billings,
Yeah, so the cap reserve is built off of our charges out. It's simply a 15% overhead of all of our charges. So everything that we bill out for our services for the year, we charge a 15% overhead that goes directly into this capital reserve fund. And it's used specifically under the law to replace aging technology. So our last replacement was, let's see, the beginning of January 18 on our tabulation equipment. And we do have some aging equipment. We lost a laptop last year, but we didn't want to make any updates or changes in a presidential year. So I think you'll see some replacement charges next year as we start to replace like aging scanners. I say scanners, and you'd think that they wouldn't be quite the amount that they charge, but yeah, a rough estimate is about 35,000 per scanner.
Scanner.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, so you can see on the expenses for that fund, we're not anticipating really any expenses other than supplies, and we haven't had any so far. So there's nothing really significant on election capital reserve. That's it.
Actually makes sense, yeah. Just a curiosity question for you, because, and I know you've explained it, and the voters pamphlet is just local. Do you get a lot of complaints?
I
Okay,
brought copies. Yes, I'm glad that you brought that up. Our office is fielding a lot of questions, and we've talked about it in these meetings before, and I've also gone out to the parties to meet with them, trying to inform the public, but I brought some copies with me. So this is a previous state pamphlet, and you'll see the big green Secretary of State seal on it. That's because the Secretary of State prints their portion for their state candidates. They don't do that in an even year primary. So it's confusing because we combine our pages at the printer and it comes to your mailboxes in one pamphlet. But the local voter pamphlet, when you get this big pamphlet, our local portion doesn't start until the back pages, right? So it's confusing because people think that this is the responsibility of my office, and it's not. So in a primary, even your primary, you're just going to see the local pages. But what we tried to do was right on the first page, state candidates, where you find information on your state candidates. It's online. We have it all over our website. We have access to a computer in elections for anybody that doesn't have computer access, that they can come in. And I should mention that the state did not used to pay their share of election costs in even years. So attempts for the state to print their own pamphlet in the primary have always failed. The last attempt was in 2019, and Jim Walsh was the sponsor on that. It failed. But in 2022, the state started paying for their own share. So they're already paying for most of these costs as it is. So it doesn't have the big sticker shock that it used to. And we are talking to our local representatives about pushing a new bill next year. The state is way behind the times on this. They need to start producing it. You only see it every other primary, so it's not something that comes around very often, but the public is upset.
What keeps us from printing the state information anyhow? Just the cost?
No, good question. So we did it. I personally believe it is in the best interest of the voter to have that information out there. So Cowlitz County tried to do this in 2022. The problem is that the Secretary of State's office, these are their candidates. They collect the filing fees, they collect and set the rules for the statements and the photos. And then according to their rules, they have to go through this approval process just like we do, but their rules are different than ours. So to give you a very good example, this year, June 4th was Cowlitz County's deadline to get our print-ready pages to the printer. The Secretary of State hadn't approved their own candidate statements and photos until the following week. And that's what happened to us in 2022. The Secretary of State hadn't approved their statements and photos. It gave us literally 2 days to create 70 pages. And we simply don't have the resources in Cowlitz County to do that.
When you say the rules, you mostly have in mind just the timeline?
No, so there are rules for local voters pamphlet about what candidates can and can't say, the length of their statement, you know, whether they can talk about themselves or their opponent. Every jurisdiction adopts different rules. And then every jurisdiction, once a candidate submits their statement, goes through a review process to either accept or reject those.
What would the legislative change be then, mandating the state to provide the information at your timeline?
Either or. So last week, I was actually talking to Senator Wilson on this, and I think that he may attempt a bill on this. What county auditors want, we want the state to continue what it does for every other state election. They're responsible for printing their own pages. We don't want the responsibility pushed onto counties because we already have strapped resources. However, if they do proceed that way, we need to be given the time and resources and able to do it effectively and accurately, which we are not in this case.
So I'm still, I know it's Monday morning, but regardless, I'm slow. In the solution you're looking for, are there 2 pamphlets going out at each time a pamphlet goes out, or are you looking for the unified pamphlet?
Well, it's cost effective to combine, which is why we do this. So to remain cost effective, we would hope that the Secretary of State would produce their pages and combine with us to save funding. So we would continue to combine in future elections, but they would be responsible for developing their own state candidate pages. And then we
Get
combine
their
at the
data
printer.
electronically and merge it with yours, and
That's exactly what we do. We merge our electronic files to the state printer and combine one cost-efficient pamphlet.
the reason you can't do that right now is because the data from the state doesn't give you the opportunity to print in a timely fashion.
We simply don't have the resources or time to get it done. And technically, it isn't our responsibility. It is the state's responsibility. However, I do believe it's in the voters' best interest, and we would like to do that, but we're in an unusual and regrettably a circumstance that we just can't be successful.
Well, that's what I like about that is the proper instinct. It's not about the comfort of the state, it's the comfort of the public.
Thank you for bringing that up, Rick.
Yeah. Certainly.
So we mail ballots this Friday. Ballots are going out.
How's your crystal ball doing? Don't say anything.
Elections are inherently unpredictable these days. However, I believe we will have a good turnout.
When I was in mortgage, you get questions all the time. Can we tell me what the rates are going to do?
Yeah.
I know. So I started carrying this, and I still have it, this little clear marble. And I said, this is my crystal ball. It's just not very big. I don't see very clearly through it.
I might take that trick.
So on the primary, we're going to have the advisory vote for that's on the general.
That's the general, I believe.
Oh, your advisory vote. Okay, yes. Yeah, you want that on the general election.
So the only thing we'll really see in the primary are any contested elections.
So this is an even year, which means, well, I say that and all of our races are, pretty much all of our races are contested. But in an even year, even uncontested races are appearing on the ballot for the write-in access. So
Except for PCO.
except for PCO. So PCO won't appear at all if it's not contested. But the differences between partisan and nonpartisan, if it's a partisan office in an even year, it appears whether it's contested or not, so that somebody has the ability to write in the primary, except for PCO.
Superior Court is a partisan office.
Nonpartisan.
Good, it shouldn't be, but
Yeah, and judges follow their own rules, and the rules vary between district court to superior court to Supreme Court to appellate court. Based on population, it's crazy. We have a graph that we use to see who follows what rules, and essentially for Cowlitz County, since we're over 100,000 population, our superior court judges, if they are unopposed, they are elected. So we have already issued, our judges were unopposed. We have already issued certificates of elections for those positions. They will not appear.
and that's RCW driven.
And like I say, different for every court, depending on whether it's district court, superior court, population. It's literally a flow chart that you track for different judicial offices.
And your office doesn't put any constraints on who can file for Superior Court,
Oh, absolutely not.
right? So without any credentials at all, someone could file.
Well, I believe in RCW, they have to have passed the Washington State bars for those positions. But I'm not the filing officer for Superior Court. That's actually the Secretary of State.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if you can force, if the public can force a judge to be on the ballot.
If they have a challenger, they would go on the
And a
ballot.
challenger can be non-credentialed by.
Well, they have to
RCW.
qualify. And again, I believe there is a qualification for Superior Court judges that they have to pass the Washington
And
State
you're the
bar.
judge of that.
That would be the state, since the state is the filing officer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. District court's the same?
I believe the district court has the same rule. However, we are the filing officer for district court.
So do you check those details of the,
I do not. You bring up a really good point, and we've seen it in the news over the years. Some cities require a one-year residency for, say, city council positions. And again, my role and limitations under the law are pretty strict. I accept the declaration of candidacy based on a certain fields, whether if they're registered to vote in the jurisdiction, 18 years of age. And anything besides that, anything past that, whether they either meet or do not meet the residency requirement or the requirements under the law, that would take a registered voter to file a challenge.
and with whom would they file the challenge? At the PDC?
Superior Court.
Oh, Superior Court. Interesting. And would that is the intent for that action to take place before the printing of the ballot?
Yes, there are specific timelines depending on when the challenge is filed to have them removed from the ballot. So yes.
I'm sufficiently impressed with the complication.
Yeah.
Good way to sum it up.
Okay.
No other questions?
Thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Did you want more questions?
No, no. no,
Okay.
I'm good.
Any miscellaneous, or we can take a short break before we start on agenda items? Or you have something? You have something?
This was the replacement.
Oh, this is replacement.
Oh. Okay. We've got a couple minutes. Why don't we just recess? We'll just recess for a couple minutes. Okay, we're back. We'll head into agenda review items. I think you're up, Jennifer. Noxious weeds, it looks like.
Good morning, Jennifer Mendoza with Noxious Weeds. We have a small contract with the Department of Transportation to continue doing noxious weed treatments within the monument along Highway 504. We've been doing this contract for several years. It's not to exceed $5,000, and it is also used as a match for some of our grant funding from the Forest Service. So it's right in line with the rest of the work that we're doing up there. And I think it helps both parties in keeping the noxious weeds down in the monument. So that's our project.
Are you able to get up? I remember last year, you work with the Forest Service and you get some funds to help them out. And then they had that bridge go out. Have you been able to get up in there?
No, we've received a walk-in permit to be able to go further than the gate, but we were advised to keep our distance from the slide for safety reasons. So we only go as far as we're able to behind the gate, but we all have plenty of work near the gate and just on the regular 504. So
I know that's probably frustrating
it is.
for you because you start to gain ground. Now you're losing ground on that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Any of the work that we had previously done to reduce the population, we're expecting to see those areas heavily infested again because of the seed viability is more than a few years. So.
Is there anything you've discovered scientifically through your job that you find interesting or discovered? Did you want to share?
That's a great question. Related to this project, no. Scientifically, one of the species that we treat up there is hawkweed. There are several species in the hawkweed family that are present that we're treating. And my favorite scientific fact about this species is there are 6 known species on the planet to be what they call pollen alleliopathic, which means that when pollinators pollinate the hawkweeds, they take this pollen, or the 6 species total. They take the pollen and it deposits on other plants, and it prevents that pollen from being viable. So it's basically destroying other pollens. So of the 6 species known on the planet to do this, 3 of them are hawkweeds. So
Wow.
it's very interesting to me, but random scientific fact.
No other pollen does, I'm going to screw the other guys?
Not that they know of. They know of 6 total species. So,
Wow.
I mean,
The same-
maybe more studying could be done, but
In the same hierarchy above the species?
it's not species specific once it's alleliopathic to others. So,
Right, but there are only 6 in some, I forget the order, file them all the way down kind of thing. So you said
6
species
total species known worldwide.
for any
Mhm.
flora.
Mhm. That they know about. Again, they may not have studied this for everything, but I thought that was very fascinating. So, random fact.
Can I have your indulgence?
Yeah.
What would you think about a trip going up to the Roraima areas?
The where?
You know where Angel Falls is?
I don't.
Venezuela. It's one of those very high, it looks bizarre there. I would think you'd just go crazy at the kind of flora that you'd see up there.
Yes, I've heard that general region has a lot of plant diversity, so I'm sure it would be fascinating for me. I can't go on any trips and not be fascinated by the plants, so
Yeah.
it's fun for my family, I'm sure.
And then, do you do any efforts to remove holly?
In the Forest Service, they have prioritized that species, so if we were to see it, we would. We also have a partnership with the Columbia Land Trust, and they prioritize that species. So when we do their projects, we do treat holly. Otherwise, it's currently on the monitor list and being proposed again as a noxious weed. It's been a very controversial species. So those are the areas that we do treatments on. We educate landowners when we see it, and if we have a little extra time, we send them a letter that says, hey, by the way, this plant is known to be invasive, but there's no legal requirements on it. We do have some data, but not a lot.
How
Just
does it
because
propagate? 'Cause it seems
Um,
to do it very slowly.
it can be spread by seeds and the birds eat the seeds and relocate it. It can also resprout from the root crown. When it's cut, it sends up more shoots.
And the reason it's deemed obnoxious or noxious.
It's invasive because the birds are eating the seeds from cultivated or landscape areas and then depositing them in the natural forests. In the natural forests, it's outcompeting the understory species and forming very dense thickets.
Well, it will outcompete blackberry?
They like to grow together.
Really?
I've seen them growing together. I'm not sure which would win, but
Yeah, but they'll last cedar and Doug fir.
it would outcompete them, especially in the seedling phase. So younger plants, it would take the resources away from them. Once they're probably, 30 feet tall, I think that the larger trees would probably win. But it's still taking resources and it can grow both in the sun and shade, so.
And they're evergreen, aren't they?
But it's also an agricultural product, which is why it's controversial.
Really?
Christmas tree industry,
Oh,
we use holly in all of our Christmas decor.
Oh,
So there are holly farmers out there who don't think it should be a noxious weed. And
Well-
that's the state weed board's controversial subject of the year.
any allergies toward holly?
Not that I know
Or
of.
Hmm.
Hard to kill.
And tansy, is that program over with right now that you were going to accept?
We had our tansy disposal day on Saturday.
Yeah, how'd that go?
I hear it went well. I haven't talked with my team yet this morning. They were out of the office before I got back. But it went well. They sent me some photos. The U-Haul looked roughly more than half full. So I anticipate we received quite a bit of tansy. I will get you a number later today.
Other than being like a PSA, the advantage for someone to collect the tansy is that they can dispose of it at no charge, and the charge is a per pound basis at the dump? Is that it?
Essentially, so when they collect it and bring it to us, we can pay for the disposal fees. On top of that, the seeds are viable for 17 years. So if you prevent it from seeding on your property, you will lessen the problem over time.
But just to make sure I understand, if I found tansy on my property, I
Mhm.
pull it up, I stick it in a plastic bag, and I throw it in the trash, and that's okay?
That's absolutely fine. I would definitely put the flowers in the trash. Don't leave them to sit on site.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they would poof. They would then spread. They can do it. I've seen it happen.
And the occurrence of tansy is all of North America?
I think it's fairly widespread throughout the US, yes.
I don't recall seeing it on the East Coast, but I wasn't as aware then.
It typically is pretty undetected in the landscape until about July. And then we see it flowering, and then most people don't detect it after that either. So part of it could have been a timing thing, or just not paying attention at the time. You never know. There's also other plants that look like it, groundsels and things.
So what happens to the bovine or the equus who eats the tansy?
There's the cinnabar moth that eats the tansy. It is still fairly widespread. Last year was a really good year for that bug. We quit releasing it as an industry because it also preys on other species in the same family at high elevations. So they stopped intentionally releasing it, but it is very widespread. And
Can't train them just to eat tansy?
well, they do. That's what they do. They love to eat the tansy, but they also want to ensure the survivability of their species. So they leave a little bit behind every year. And so their food supply will never completely go away.
Again, how does it harm the livestock?
It is toxic to ingest the livestock for horses and cattle. It is, I can't remember the toxin right now, but it can make them very sick and kill them.
Is
So
it a long-term sick, or they eat it today and you'll know tomorrow?
it would
that
be
they
a
ate it?
longer term accumulation. Yes.
So they could eat some today and be all right, but if they ate it the next 3 days,
Yes, if they ate about a third of their body weight in tansy, it could kill them.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Any other questions?
I think we're good.
All right, thank you.
Public Works.
Good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. So for tomorrow's agenda, we have 3 items. One on the consent, which is a professional service agreements with Gray and Osborne to provide development review services on an as-needed basis. This is to help me out while we're trying to recruit staff. So any newer review projects that come in, we would send to Gray and Osborne to complete the engineering review. To free up time in my schedule and keep the projects moving faster. So this is $50,000 not to exceed dollar amount. The other 2 items, we actually talked about both of them last week when we set up the project numbers. This week, we have the local agency agreement for both the Delameter Road Culvert Replacement Project and the Gilmore Road Studebaker Creek Replacement Project. This is to obligate our federal funding.
Yeah, we talked about those last week, right?
Yes, this is just the next step in our
And
process.
these are our estimates on it. When the engineering gets done, you'll know exactly where you're at. but-
Yes. I know, nothing new and exciting this week.
Depends on whether you're in public works or in DC politics.
Yeah.
True, nothing new and exciting for this week's agenda from Public Works. Is that a better way to describe the week?
Has damage on the roads occurred because of the heat?
Yes, we did have some damage on Little Kalama River Road. We had some,
That one we've heard about.
yes, and
That
that's
was-
the only one that we've heard of.
I was yesterday riding a bicycle on Dyke Road. And if you go roughly southbound on Dyke Road, it's much easier going in that direction. Coming back, the road it'll shake your teeth.
Yes, Dyke Road is one of our projects that we're working on to finalize the right-of-way and permitting. And as soon as the right-of-way and permitting, that road will be we're not doing a full reconstruction, we're doing a full depth reclamation like we did on the other portion of it a few years ago. So that remaining portion will be done where we basically pulverize everything, mix some more rock and concrete in, wet it down to get a nice stable base, and then asphalt over it.
On the dike, it seems like sometimes it's fairly narrow. It's whatever the width of the 2 lanes plus some shoulder. And in other places, it's like much wider and there's a house on there. How does that work?
So a lot of those houses were put in, especially the Riverside. They brought in fill and they
Oh,
built,
they're put in down low for the most part.
yes. And then some people on the inside who are long-term residents of the area had fill brought in so that their houses were at the level of the levee.
Yeah.
They did that so that to stay well above the flooding, because especially down there, it's still agricultural land, and so the fields hold water in the winter.
So they built it up. So I think it's part of the dike, but it's not.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. That makes sense. And how should we think about, if we're inclined to think about you use it, you pay for it, Dyke Road gets beaten up by the heavy trucks.
Yes.
And is that something that they pay for, or that just works out in the wash?
Currently, it is not something that they pay for. There is an ordinance on the books, a haul route ordinance, that the commissioners have never chosen to impose on any of the businesses down there. Yeah, the haul route, there's only one company that we have an agreement with for a haul route. And to date, they have not been charged for anything because their use of the route is minimal. But I can't remember what the code citation number is, but it's in the road section, which I believe is section 11. It's called haul routes, and you can establish a haul route on any route that you can directly attribute things like a quarry or a logging operation to establish, okay, we go out and we do a survey of the road. We know approximately how much a typical road would deteriorate and then prorate that cost.
The heavy trucks that haul the material to the landfill, the crushed rock and all that, that is not sufficient to be a long-term problem?
Not
The stored all contract.
the stored all contract, no. Especially because that road in particular is one that is designated and was designed for heavier traffic.
What makes the design, that's on the underlayment and the top and all that is,
Yes, you have what they call a meteor section, so you'd have more rock on it and a thicker layer of asphalt. The existing dike road down in Woodland was originally just a dike road that the district used. So when the road started falling apart 8 years ago, we did some borings out there and we found that we had 2 or 3, maybe 4 inches of asphalt chip seal mix over a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches of rock, which is not a stable section for hauling heavy loads frequently.
I was out by Space Age. That overlay project looks really good. Yeah.
I heard interesting reports about they were surprised because they did that as night work, just how fast the traffic was coming off the highways, and they were having a hard time being able to get out of the way fast enough before the lineup on the off ramps was on the main line. So that was difficult work, but they definitely got it done, and we're happy and hopeful that'll hold up.
Looks real good. And they did on both sides of the bridge of the overpass. So you're dealing with off ramps on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
speaking of off-ramps, the northbound off-ramp onto Allen Street
Okay.
to go towards the coast or towards town, it's pretty well, I mean, heavy trucks have just really not only worn a groove, they haven't worn a groove, they pushed out material. So that's WashDOT that's responsible.
Yes, the ramps are WashDOT's responsibility.
It would seem strange to me that they did not anticipate that. I mean, that looks like it wasn't planned well.
Okay, yeah, I haven't been off that ramp for a while.
Yeah. I'm always curious about how things actually happen. So I would think WashDOT off-ramps would typically be all the same class, but apparently they're not.
I'm not sure how they designed those. I'm sure that they take a heavier look at ones that go into ports. But
Anything interesting going on in the Port of Woodland?
not that I've heard. I have not heard anything from the Port of Woodland.
They purchased the RV park that was down there, or the trailer park, I guess is the right word.
The one all the way at the Austin Point down that end.
Yes, but they cannot vacate the property, that, I should say, they cannot cause the tenants to move. They've got a 10-year time constraint. I'm not sure how all that worked out.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wow. Is that the one they've been wanting for a while? That's
Yeah,
actually, I've been by it. It's actually pretty bad shape.
yeah, it's always been a source of calls to the sheriff's department.
Yeah. Wow. But we'll sell it to you, but you can't do anything with it for 10 years?
I think they wanted to just get something going. They've been trying to get, it would all, the costs for them would have included paying exorbitantly to the owner of the property who was playing real hardball. And then that would almost, well, I forget the numbers, but it's like it would be an additional $2 million to get everybody out of there.
Yeah. See, those are tough situations because no matter how bad that park looks to us on the outside,
It's home.
somebody considers it home. And so you're taking somebody out of their home, and that's a difficult spot to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Okay.
Thank you. You know, I could
Thank
ask
you.
you questions
I
until
know.
doomsday, so I'll stop.
Yeah. Thanks, Susan. So Jessica said she'd be in about 10:30, so we can take a recess till 10:30 and then take care of that. Okay. Okay, back from recess, HR.
HR stands for humbly requesting.
Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I have two executive sessions this morning. The first is for qualifications of an applicant, and the second is for performance of a public employee.
Any time ideas?
Let's do 10 minutes for each, so 20 minutes.
Okay, so we'll go into executive session, qualifications of an applicant, 10 minutes, and performance of a public employee for 10 minutes.
Yep.
Okay, we will adjourn. Okay, we're back from executive session, no decisions. Jessica?
Jessica Warren, Human Resources again. I have 3 requests from the prosecuting attorney's office. The first is he has an open legal specialist position and he'd like to promote his part-time office specialist to the full-time legal specialist position and start her at step 2.
Okay,
Next request, another open legal specialist position, he'd like to hire a person up to step 7 for that position.
okay.
I'm good with that.
And then the last request, there is an open office specialist position in the PA's office, and he'd like to start that person up to step 5.
Okay,
And that's all I have. Thank you.
thank you, Jessica. Any miscellaneous?
Not really. I did read today that they transferred the residents that were above 18 to the prison system, which relieves some of the pressure there. So I would, and WASPEC sent out a letter in support of that. So I would assume that they're working to relieve the pressure so they can reopen taking admissions.
Microphone.
Well, okay, I was asking about Green Hills, and there was a fair number of inmates that were going to be moved to adult.
Mhm.
Should we infer from that that there be openings to put people in Green Hills, or they're just going to reduce the head count at Green Hills?
What I read today didn't really indicate either way, but my guess would be they're under quite a bit of pressure to open admissions. So I think that is their first step to relieve enough beds to be able to reopen
Got it.
admissions, but they haven't explicitly said that I've
Do
seen.
do you know if they're actually physically at full capacity before the transfers?
From what I read, they were above. I don't remember the beds.
okay.
It was a surprisingly low number. I don't know what I thought it would be, but I want to say in the 200 to 300 range is what their capacity is, and they were above that.
In our jail, your max capacity is nothing you can really pin your finger on because it depends on the kinds of inmates. Is that right?
Correct. We have 354 beds, but a world in which we could actually fill all of those beds would be pretty much
And we're
impossible.
currently at roughly 210 or something?
Right. We're hovering in the 200 range, 190, 210, back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just curious
Yeah.
about that Green Hills. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. See nothing else. We will adjourn till tomorrow morning.